My father didn't just disown me. He made sure everyone saw it. The stained glass above cast fractured colors across the marble floor, as if even the light didn't know where to settle. I stood alone in the center of the great hall, surrounded by a semicircle of mahogany chairs filled with relatives, legal advisors, and acquaintances I hadn't seen since I stopped being useful to the Cole name. Richard Cole, my father, sat with perfect posture on his throne-like armchair at the head. His hands rested calmly on the envelope he would soon weaponize. "I believe we're all gathered," he said, his voice as smooth and sharp as the blade I knew was coming. "Let's begin." My throat was dry. I forced myself not to fidget, not to show weakness. My palms dug into the sides of my dress, hidden by the folds of navy blue. I had received the invitation only days ago, a formal family announcement, no specifics, but something in my gut had told me to come. Caleb sat to his right, flashing the kind of grin he used to wear as a child when he snuck the last cookie and watched me take the blame. Now, 20 years older, that smile was more polished, more practiced, but no less cruel. Richard turned to him and slid the envelope across the polished table. "Caleb," he said, "you've earned this. The company, the estate, the accounts, all of it." Polite applause fluttered from the edges of the room. My mother's eyes flickered to her lap, pretending to admire the bracelet she'd touched 1,000 times before. Caleb accepted the envelope like it was holy scripture, and then, like an afterthought, my father turned to me. "And you," he said, voice cooled to ice. "You chose to abandon this family. You left the company to... what? Chase some charity dream?" He laughed, not loud, but sharp. "You're not fit to carry our name, let alone our legacy. You are, and always have been, the soft one. Emotional. A liability." His words didn't just sting, they flayed. But worse than the words were the silent agreements that filled the room. No one looked at me. No one defended me. I took a step forward. "You never asked why I left." Richard leaned back, mocking. "I didn't need to. You ran." "I didn't run," I said. "I found purpose." He waved a hand, dismissive. "Spare us the philosophy. This is business. You chose sentiment over success. That was your decision. And this," he gestured to Caleb, "is mine." A cold silence blanketed the hall. Then Grayson Wells, our longtime legal counsel, cleared his throat. "If I may," he began, hesitant, "there is one document that requires attention before we finalize anything today." My father narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about, Wells?" "It's an amendment," he said. "Filed and sealed by Ms. Eleanor Whitmore, your mother, sir, to be opened only under one condition." Grayson pulled out a weathered envelope, much older than the ones already on the table. This clause was to be enacted only if Ms. Sienna Cole was ever deemed unworthy of inheritance by her father. The room shifted. Richard's jaw clenched. "That's absurd. She had no legal—" "She did," Grayson cut in, more firmly now. "Ms. Whitmore retained controlling shares in Cole Enterprises, 51%. Her amendment overrides any current distribution of power if the condition is triggered." Caleb turned pale. Grayson looked at me. "Would you like to read it?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He opened the paper and read. "In the event that my granddaughter, Sienna Cole, is declared unfit by her father to inherit or participate in the family legacy, I hereby grant her full authority over my 51% controlling shares in Cole Enterprises. This authority is effective immediately." The only sound in the hall was the brittle shift of a chair leg scraping against tile. Richard's lips twisted. "This isn't possible." "It is," Grayson said, "and it's binding." I stepped forward slowly. My hands no longer shook. "You said I was a liability," I told him. "But maybe you were just afraid I'd build something you couldn't control." Richard stood abruptly, chest heaving. "You don't understand the business. You don't have the spine for this." I met his eyes, calm. "Number, I have something you never did. Integrity." Caleb opened his mouth, perhaps to protest, perhaps to curse. But no words came. Grayson pushed a folder toward me. "These are the papers that now belong to you. I place my hand on them, steady. Effective immediately, Sienna Cole is the majority shareholder of Cole Enterprises. And the silence in the room wasn't shock, it was fear. A seat at the table doesn't mean you're safe. Sometimes it just makes you the biggest target. The door to Eleanor's old office creaked open with the sound of forgotten hinges. Dust spiraled through the thin beam of light from the hallway, catching the motes like suspended time. The air was colder here, thicker. It hadn't been touched since her funeral. No one dared. Until now. I stepped in, the scent of aged mahogany and lavender oil surrounding me like her ghost still lingered. My heels echoed against the floorboards as I crossed to her desk. Grayson had handed me the key just hours ago, a small brass skeleton nestled inside a carved wooden box along with a folded letter and a worn slip of paper. He said nothing, only nodded once, solemnly, as if whatever I'd find next would change everything. I slid the key into the drawer. It resisted, then gave with a soft click, a false bottom. I ran my fingers along the edges until a panel gave way. Hidden inside was a single USB drive, wrapped in lace ribbon. On the metal body, in Eleanor's unmistakable cursive, were the words, "Not everything is what it seems." I didn't plug it in, not yet, not here. Behind me, the door shifted. "Busy already?" Caleb's voice curled into the room, casual, too casual. I turned to face him. His suit was impeccable, like always, but his tie hung looser than usual. He leaned against the doorframe like he owned the place. "Just paying respects," I replied, tucking the drive into my coat pocket. "You remember this office?" He chuckled. "Of course, the Dragon's Den." She preferred Garden of Ideas. "Semantics," he shrugged, pushing off the door and taking a slow step inside. "Word is you've already started reviewing documents. Ambitious." "And?" He tilted his head. "Just surprised. You've been gone so long, I thought you might need a refresher on how things work." There it was, the glint beneath the sugar. "I remember just fine," I said. "Especially how fast things rot when no one's looking." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Careful, Sienna. Not every storybook heroine survives Chapter 2. I held his stare. "That's the thing, Caleb. I'm not reading the story. I'm writing it." His grin slipped, just a fraction, then he turned and walked out. No goodbye. When I was sure he was gone, I locked the office door behind me. The envelope from Grayson still sat inside the box. I unfolded Eleanor's letter, my fingers trembling. "If you found this, you're already deeper in than I ever wanted you to be. I couldn't stop what your father and brother built, but I tried to leave you tools. This USB is one. The code is incomplete. By design. You'll need more than access. You'll need courage. Love always, E." I exhaled slowly. That night, I waited until the house was dark. Everyone was too busy whispering about power shifts to notice me slipping into the east wing. In my room, I shut off every wireless connection, drew the blinds, and booted up an old laptop. One Eleanor had gifted me years ago, with no company links. The USB slid into the port with a metallic click that echoed too loudly in the silence. A folder popped open. Accounts. Private. Cole Financial inside were spreadsheets. Dozens. At first glance, routine budgets, payroll, allocations. But then I saw the repetition. Monthly transfers to an unknown vendor. Dolex Incorporated. Cross-referencing with employee databases, the vendor didn't exist in any legitimate contract logs. And the signature on the authorizations? Caleb. I clicked further. There were scans of bank wires, internal memos, and 3 flagged payments totaling nearly $500,000, funneled offshore. Some of the files were locked, encrypted. I tried the numbers on Eleanor's slip. A date, November 6th, 1987. Partial access unlocked. More folders appeared, but still fragments. Someone had scrubbed the trail clean, or tried to. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why my return rattled Caleb, why he was smiling too wide, speaking too sweetly. This wasn't a turf war, it was a cleanup job. And I'd walked into it uninvited. I leaned back, eyes burning, heart pounding. "This isn't just sabotage," I whispered. "It's a cover-up, and I'm the scapegoat." You want to lead? Let's see how you survive a public hanging. It started with a single headline. Then came the swarm. By the time I stepped into the Cole Enterprises building Monday morning, the lobby monitors had already rotated through 3 different news networks, each flashing my name beneath some variation of the phrase charity embezzlement. Some used alleged. Most didn't bother. Employees turned away the moment I passed. Phones buzzed in palms. I caught one screen mid-scroll, a thread dissecting my career, my motives, even the color of my lipstick the day I claimed Eleanor's shares. There was a photo of me smiling at a housing build in Nairobi, now captioned, "Was it hope or a heist?" My heels clicked against the marble like gunfire. I locked myself in my office and let the door consume the whispers behind me. The silence inside wasn't peace, it was pressure. The kind that wrapped around your ribs and dared you to keep breathing. My phone rang again, the 15th time that morning. PR firms, board members, journalists pretending to be interns. I shut it off, pressed the bridge of my nose, and tried to remember the last time I had slept. Grayson knocked once before entering. He looked older than usual. Grayer, if that was possible. "They're demanding an emergency meeting," he said. "By noon." "Of course they are." He hesitated. "You didn't siphon anything, did you?" I stared at him. "I had to ask," he muttered. I nodded, not offended. "I didn't." He nodded back, but it wasn't relief. It was dread. "Then you need to prove it fast." And just like that, he was gone. I slumped into the chair, pulled up my inbox. Hundreds of emails, some anonymous, some threats, some from past donors to Africa. Hope asking, in polite tones, if I had betrayed them too. Each one carved deeper than the last. Then, a knock. Gentler, softer. Mei Lin peeked in, holding a paper cup and a folded envelope. "You look like you could use a warm drink. And this." She placed both on my desk. I stared at them. "What is it?" She smiled faintly. Something she left between the pages. She always hid things in places no one bothered to check. She was gone before I could speak. I opened the envelope. Inside was a torn scrap of paper with 6 digits and a single word, "Final key." My heart kicked. I reached for the old laptop I'd hidden in my desk, the one I used the night I found the USB, plugged it in, entered the code. The folders blinked once, then unlocked. My breath caught. There it was, a full ledger, transfer history, expense trails, but not just spreadsheets. Footage, a series of time-stamped clips, the hallway outside Eleanor's office, a security camera view of a man entering after midnight. Hoodie up, but the posture unmistakable. Caleb. He inserted a USB, transferred files, unplugged, date and time, 2 hours before the forged donor leak to the press. My fingers hovered over the pause key, frozen. They wanted me out. They wanted me ruined. And he wanted me erased. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there in the dark office, screen glow casting blue across my face, every breath shallow. Then the tears came, slow, burning. But something had changed, something quiet, solid, like steel finally cooling into shape. They thought they'd buried me beneath scandal, that I'd fold, fade, walk away to preserve my pride, number I was done walking away. They want me out? Then I'll give them something they can't ignore. I wiped my face, sat up straighter. Tomorrow, I won't just defend myself, I'll destroy the illusion. They brought their sharpened knives. I brought the truth. The conference room on the 23rd floor was designed to impress. Glass walls on 3 sides, a sweeping skyline of Manhattan spread like a promise beyond. But today, it felt like a stage, and I was the target. I entered at 8:58 a.m. sharp. Eyes turned, some narrowed, others curious. No one spoke, not even Caleb, seated at the head beside my father, a stack of folders already prepped in front of him. Grayson stood near the legal monitor, neutral as always, but I saw it, the twitch in his jaw, the way his hands remained too still. He was bracing for impact. So was I. I took my seat without looking at anyone. The screen behind me flickered to life, awaiting the first presentation. At 9 o'clock exactly, Caleb stood. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice crisp with the confidence of someone sure they were about to win. Due to the events of the past week and the resulting damage to Cole Enterprises' public standing, I formally motion to suspend Ms. Sienna Cole's authority as interim CEO, pending a vote of confidence. A murmur rippled through the room. Richard said nothing, just watched. Caleb pressed on. As you all know, allegations have surfaced, including embezzlement during her time with Africa Hope. The optics alone have been catastrophic. He tapped the first file. Brand equity is plummeting. Investor trust? Fragile. We cannot allow emotion to guide leadership in this climate. He glanced at me, that polished smile stretched thin. It's not personal, it's necessary. I stood quietly. If even one of those allegations is proven true, I said, my voice steady, I'll resign, today. Caleb blinked. But if they're not, I continued, then it's time the rest of you see what's really been happening behind closed doors. I turned to the control panel and plugged in the USB. The screen lit up. First, I said, let's address the source of the scandal. Slide 1, a screenshot of the doctored email chain. Slide 2, metadata timestamps. Slide 3, comparison with the original, unaltered documents pulled from Africa Hope's archived servers. Fake, I said simply. Caleb shifted. Then came the next slide. CCTV footage. The room went still. The angle was overhead, dim but unmistakable, a hooded figure entering Eleanor's office. The timestamp matched the exact window in which the scandal documents were created. He plugged in a USB, transferred files. The hood fell back just slightly. His profile caught in a flash of light. It was Caleb. Gasps. Audible. Real. I clicked again. This isn't about scandal, I said. It's about a cover-up. Let's talk about Dolex Incorporated slide after slide. Banking trails, account transfers, payment approvals, all linking Caleb to a ghost company with no physical office, laundering over $500,000 in the last fiscal quarter. I turned to the room. You can choose to ignore this. Pretend it's just sibling rivalry, but here's the final number. 42 employees let go in the last year for redundancy, each one involved in departments that questioned fund flow. The room felt colder. Someone stood, Mr. Chow from R&D. Is this real? He asked. Grayson nodded once. Confirmed as of this morning. Silence. Then I spoke again. I'm not asking for Caleb's head. I'm asking for transparency. I request an independent audit, starting today. Effective immediately, Caleb Cole is suspended from all company duties until that process concludes. Caleb stood too fast. His chair toppled. You're bluffing. No, I cut him off. I'm leading. I turned toward the board. Vote if you want. But remember this moment, not because I brought vengeance, but because I brought proof. No one voted. Caleb's face drained of color. He didn't speak again. He just walked out. Richard remained seated, unmoved. But when our eyes met, something cracked. Not anger, not pride, recognition. You tried to erase me, Caleb, but I became something you couldn't control. Inconvenient truth. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was clarity. The office felt different now. Not louder, just lighter. As if someone had cracked a window open after years of stale air. Sunlight streamed through the blinds like it had been waiting, patient and silent, for the chance to pour in. The week following the boardroom reckoning moved slowly, deliberately. No chaos, no scandal, just quiet shifts. Hallways echoed less with fear and more with the sound of people actually talking again. The tension hadn't vanished, but it had loosened its grip. I spent my mornings in Eleanor's old greenhouse, now overgrown, but alive. I trimmed ivy with bare hands, let dirt wedge under my nails, and thought more clearly among the vines than I ever had beneath fluorescent lights. In her world, growth was always silent first. By midweek, I was at my desk reviewing policy drafts when Mei Lin entered, holding a beige folder. She said nothing, simply placed it down and offered me a gentle nod before slipping out. Inside was a list, dozens of names. Employees quietly let go over the years. Some had questioned expense sheets. Others refused to participate in restructuring. Some names I recognized. Most I didn't. I stared at the pages for a long time. Then I picked up my pen and began to write. The letters were short. No apologies, no explanations, just invitations. If you still believe in what this place could be, we'd be lucky to have you back. Signed only, Sienna. The next morning, 2 former tech analysts walked in holding coffee and resumes. By noon, a security guard I hadn't seen in years stood outside my office, unsure if he was allowed to knock. I opened the door before he could and told him welcome back. It wasn't redemption. It was restoration. Later that day, I was walking past the East Wing when I noticed the door to Eleanor's reading room was ajar. I hadn't entered since she passed. Something stopped me every time, but this time, someone was already inside. Richard. He was seated in her armchair, elbows on knees, holding something in his hands, a worn photograph. I hovered in the doorway. "You were 10, he said without looking up. "Paint all over your face. She gave you a canvas and said, 'Let her be messy.' I thought she was letting you waste time." He turned the photo toward me. In it, a small version of me, smiled wide, red and blue smears on my cheeks. Eleanor knelt beside me, laughing. "I kept this," he said. "Don't know why." I walked in slowly, sat across from him. No desk between us this time, no armor. He looked older here, not in age, in weight. "I built this empire with bare hands," he said, "and I thought control was the only way to keep it." I didn't interrupt. "I didn't see you," he whispered. "I saw a risk, a softness I didn't understand." I met his eyes. "You didn't fail us," he said finally. "We failed you." The silence between us wasn't bitter. It was bruised, but healing. I reached for the photo, held it beside my palm. "You still have time," I said quietly. "Fix what you can." He didn't nod, didn't promise. But when he left the room, he did so without closing the door behind him. That night, the Foundation's inbox flagged a major donation alert. $1 million had been deposited into the Eleanor Whitmore Fund for Women, the shelter program she started years ago. No name, just a note in the memo line. "In honor of E.W." I thought closure would come with silence, but it came in ink, on paper, in his handwriting. The paper was thick, heavy almost, folded 3 times and sealed with care. No return address, just my name, written in a hand I hadn't seen since we were children, when he'd scribble secret messages and slip them under my door after arguments we never spoke of. I sat by the window of a quiet cafe tucked at the end of 3rd Street. It had no signboard, just a faded bell that chimed when you entered, and a chalkboard that offered honest coffee, no questions. I opened the letter with trembling fingers. "Sienna, I don't expect forgiveness. I didn't write this for redemption. I wrote it because the silence between us started to feel too much like a grave. I didn't hate you. I hated not being enough. I watched you walk into rooms and be seen, really seen, even when no one agreed with you. I never learned how to do that without demanding attention. So I resented the way you existed, quietly, purposefully, and I broke things, because breaking was the only language I understood. You won. Not because you destroyed me, but because you didn't try to. I hope one day I learn how to stand beside someone like you without feeling like I'm disappearing. Caleb." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the small velvet box beside the USB. Both belong to Eleanor now. Or maybe they belong to the legacy she'd left me, not in title, but in truth. The next day, I returned to the office. It didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. No sidelong glances, no whispers, just nods, smiles, the kind that came from something real, not forced. The strategic planning meeting was scheduled at 10. I walked into the room, expecting the usual rustle of papers and distracted silence. Instead, they stood. Every person, from R&D, finance, HR, even 2 from janitorial staff invited for feedback, they stood as I entered. No applause, just quiet acknowledgement. I paused, not from pride, from something deeper, something I couldn't quite name. At the head of the table, I placed my notes down, took a breath, and looked around. "You're not here because of me," I said. "You're here because you believed this place could change, that we could lead differently." I clicked the projector. On the screen, instead of charts, was a single phrase Eleanor once wrote in her planner: "People over power, always." I turned toward the whiteboard, uncapped a marker, and smiled. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to Caleb, not to Richard, not even to myself. I was building forward now, not to erase the past, but to reshape the future it left behind. Behind me, I heard the gentle clink of porcelain. Maylin placed a cup of tea on the table, just like she used to do for Eleanor. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's how you choose to lead, even when no one's watching. Beneath the polished walls of power and the silent weight of betrayal, a quiet revolution unfolded, not with fury, but with truth. In a world built to favor control over character, one woman's refusal to bow became the tremor that cracked the foundation. Justice didn't come screaming. It arrived in pages, in presence, and in the quiet return of dignity. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.